You see, there are places in this world that have nothing to do with geography. They aren't marked on any map. You won't find them by looking out the window or driving down the street. These places exist entirely in the mind, in the way we arrange our lives, in the invisible structures we build around ourselves. And yet, they are more real, more powerful, more dangerous than any physical location could ever be. Most of us spend our entire lives wandering through these places without ever realizing we're trapped. We feel exhausted, anxious, hollow, and we blame ourselves. We think something is wrong with us. But what if the problem isn't you at all? What if you're simply living in the wrong psychological neighborhood? I want to tell you about 7 places that destroy who you really are. Not through violence or force, but through something far more subtle. They destroy you by making you forget yourself, by teaching you to abandon your own nature, by convincing you that the mask is more important than the face beneath it. The first dangerous place is what I call the Hall of Mirrors. This is where everyone around you reflects back only what you already believe. Every conversation confirms what you think. Every opinion matches your own. Every fear you have is validated and amplified by the chorus of voices that sound remarkably like your own. Now, you might think this sounds rather comfortable, even pleasant. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. You see, the human mind is not meant to live in perfect agreement with itself. It's meant to be challenged, tested, stretched. When you surround yourself only with people who think exactly as you do, something rather curious happens. Your mind doesn't grow stronger. It grows more rigid, more brittle, more afraid. I once knew a man who spent all his time with people who shared his exact views about everything. Politics, religion, the proper way to live. He thought he was being wise, staying with his own kind, but what he didn't realize was that his capacity to think was shrinking. Every day, his world became a little smaller, a little more frightening, a little more dependent on the group to tell him what was real. The problem with the Hall of Mirrors is that it makes you terrified of different ideas. A new thought feels like an attack. A different perspective feels like betrayal. You become so identified with your beliefs that questioning them feels like dying. And so you cling even tighter to the mirrors, demanding they show you only what you want to see. But here's what you must understand. When you live in the Hall of Mirrors, you are not really thinking at all. You are simply repeating, you are not growing. You are calcifying. You are not becoming more yourself, you are becoming less. The way out is simple, but not easy. You must deliberately seek out voices that disturb you. Not to argue with them, not to prove them wrong, but simply to feel your own mind stretch. To remember what it's like to not know, to wonder, to question even your most cherished certainties. The second dangerous place is the arena of comparison. This is where you measure your worth against everyone else's achievements, status, possessions, and success. In this place, nothing you do is ever quite enough because someone somewhere has always done it better, faster, or more impressively. The arena of comparison is peculiar because it disguises itself as motivation. We tell ourselves that comparing ourselves to others will inspire us to improve. But watch what actually happens. When you live in this arena, you don't become inspired. You become exhausted. Every achievement feels hollow because it's not good enough compared to someone else's. Every success is immediately followed by the question, but what about them? I remember a woman who got a promotion at work, something she'd been working toward for years, but instead of feeling joy, all she could think about was her colleague who had been promoted to an even higher position. Her accomplishment meant nothing because someone else had accomplished more. Do you see the trap? She had given away her power to feel satisfied with her own life. The arena of comparison is built on a fundamental confusion. It treats life as if it were a race with a single finish line, as if there were some objective measure by which all human lives could be ranked. But this is nonsense. Your life is not comparable to anyone else's life. You are not in competition with the rest of humanity. You are on your own path, playing your own game. When you live in the arena of comparison, you stop pursuing what actually brings you joy and start chasing what brings recognition. You stop listening to your own desires and start performing for an imaginary audience. You become so busy keeping score that you forget to actually live. The escape from this place requires something radical. You must stop measuring altogether, not occasionally, but completely. You must learn to do things simply because they delight you, not because they will impress anyone. You must recover the child's capacity to play without keeping score, to create without needing applause, to exist without constantly calculating your rank. The third dangerous place is the theater of masks. This is where authenticity is punished and performance is rewarded. Here you learn to show only the parts of yourself that are acceptable, impressive, or useful. Everything else must be hidden behind a carefully constructed facade. Now, we all wear masks to some degree. This is natural, even necessary. You don't bare your soul to the grocery clerk or share your deepest fears at a business meeting. But the theater of masks is different. In this place, the mask becomes so thick, so permanent, that you forget there was ever a face beneath it. I knew a man who worked in a place where showing any weakness was career death. He learned to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, to agree with ideas he opposed, to hide every part of himself that didn't fit the approved image. And after years of this performance, something terrifying happened. He no longer knew who he really was. The mask had become the only identity he could recognize. This is what the theater of masks does. It doesn't just hide your true self. It erases it, slowly, imperceptibly, until one day you reach for yourself and find nothing there. You've become a hollow performance, a walking costume with no one inside. The most insidious part is how exhausting it becomes. Every interaction requires careful calculation. What can I say? What must I hide? How should I appear? You come home from a day in the theater, and you're drained, not from genuine engagement, but from the constant effort of being someone you're not. And here's the cruel joke. The very thing you're trying to achieve through this performance, connection, belonging, acceptance, these things can only be found through authenticity. The performance creates exactly the isolation it's trying to avoid. You become surrounded by people who don't really know you, in relationships that feel strangely empty, receiving approval that means nothing, because it's not really for you. The way out of the theater requires courage. You must begin taking off the mask, carefully at first, testing to see who stays and who leaves. And yes, some people will leave. Those who preferred your performance to your reality. But this is not loss. This is liberation. Because the people who remain and the new ones who arrive will be in relationship with you, not with your costume. The fourth dangerous place is the room of silence. Not the good kind of silence, the contemplative stillness where wisdom grows. No, this is the toxic silence, where pain is buried, needs are denied, and truth is too dangerous to speak. Many of us grew up in families that operated like this. Everything looked fine on the surface. No screaming, no obvious dysfunction. But beneath the pleasant facade, everyone was slowly suffocating. Feelings weren't expressed. Problems weren't addressed. Needs were swallowed and hidden. The unspoken rule was simple. Don't rock the boat. In the room of silence, you learn that having emotional needs is selfish, that expressing pain is weakness, that the way to maintain peace is to never be honest about what hurts. And so you become very skilled at suffering quietly, at pretending everything is fine, at convincing yourself that numbness is the same as peace. But here's what actually happens in this place. Your emotional needs don't disappear when you ignore them. They accumulate in your body, in your nervous system, creating anxiety you can't explain, and depression that seems to come from nowhere. You feel lonely even when surrounded by family, because no one is really seeing you. You're all performing this elaborate dance of not noticing each other's pain. I knew a family that prided itself on never fighting. They thought this meant they were close. But when I talked to them individually, each person felt desperately alone. The mother was depressed but couldn't say so. The father was overwhelmed but had no one to tell. The children learned that their feelings were inconvenient disruptions to the family's carefully maintained image of perfection. The room of silence teaches you to cope with pain rather than heal from it. It trains you to ask, how can I better tolerate this hurt, rather than how can I address what's actually wrong? And so you develop all sorts of clever strategies for managing discomfort while never actually resolving anything. The way out requires breaking the silence, gently but firmly. It means saying out loud the things that have been hidden, not with anger or blame, but with simple honesty. I'm hurting. I need help. This isn't working for me. It means risking the false peace for the possibility of real connection. And yes, the family system will resist. Silence is comfortable for those who fear honesty, but your liberation is worth the discomfort. The fifth dangerous place is the storm of noise. This is the opposite of toxic silence. Here you're bombarded constantly with information, stimulation, demands, distractions. There's always something to read, something to discuss, something requiring your attention. You fill every quiet moment with activity because stillness feels unbearable. And you might think this sounds like modern life, and you'd be partly right. But this place has existed long before our current era. It's anywhere you use external noise to avoid internal truth. Reading the newspaper obsessively, to avoid thinking about your marriage. Staying endlessly busy with social engagements to escape your own company. Filling your mind with other people's problems so you don't have to face your own. The storm of noise is seductive because it feels productive. You're staying informed, staying busy, staying engaged. But watch what happens to your mind in this place. You consume enormous amounts of information, but retain almost none of it. You have opinions about everything, but deep understanding of nothing. You're exhausted from constant mental activity, but can't point to anything you've actually accomplished. I once knew a man who read 3 newspapers every morning and spent his evenings in endless discussions about current events. He prided himself on being well informed, but when I asked him what he truly understood, what wisdom he'd gained from all this consumption, he had nothing to say. He'd been filling his mind with noise to avoid the silence where real thinking happens. The storm of noise keeps you in a state of constant reaction. You're always responding to the latest thing, the newest crisis, the most recent outrage. There's no time for contemplation, for integration, for allowing experiences to settle into understanding. And without that settling, nothing you learn actually becomes part of you. It just passes through, leaving you feeling full but somehow still empty. The way out is frightening because it requires turning off the noise and sitting with whatever arises. At first, anxiety will flood in. All the things you've been avoiding will rush to the surface. This is why you kept the noise going in the first place. But if you can stay with the discomfort, something remarkable happens. Your mind begins to clear. Your thoughts become your own again. You start to hear that quiet inner voice that the storm would grudge. This is where you systematically abandon your own truth, your own needs, your own instincts. It happens so gradually you don't even notice. You say yes when everything inside you screams no. You stay in situations that drain you because leaving feels too difficult. You choose what's expected over what's authentic, what's safe over what's true. In the chamber of self-betrayal, you become skilled at ignoring yourself. Someone asks what you want, and you genuinely don't know because you've spent so long considering only what others want, what seems practical, what will avoid conflict. Your gut instincts, which were once clear and strong, become faint whispers you've learned to disregard. I knew a woman who spent 20 years in a career she didn't care about, married to a man she didn't love, living in a city that depressed her. When I asked why, she said it was what made sense. Her family approved, the job was secure, the marriage was stable. She'd built her entire life on what seemed reasonable to everyone else, while completely ignoring what felt right to her. This is what the chamber of self-betrayal does. It convinces you that maturity means ignoring your desires, that responsibility means betraying your truth, that being a good person means abandoning yourself. And so you make 1,000 small compromises, each one barely noticeable, until you wake up one day and realize you're living someone else's life entirely. The cruelest part is that society often rewards self-betrayal. You're called mature when you ignore your needs, responsible when you sacrifice your happiness, selfless when you put everyone else first. But this is not virtue. This is slow spiritual death. You cannot love others authentically while betraying yourself. You cannot give from an empty well. The way out requires something that may feel selfish at first. You must begin checking in with yourself. Again, what do I actually want? What does this feel like in my body? What is my truth, regardless of what others expect? And then, most frightening of all, you must begin making choices based on these answers. Some people will be disappointed. This is inevitable. But your life belongs to you, not to their expectations. The seventh and most dangerous place is the basement of shadows. This is the internal space where you've locked away all the parts of yourself you're too afraid or ashamed to face. Every painful memory, every shameful thought, every quality you've decided is unacceptable. Down into the basement they go. Now you might think this sounds like a good strategy. Push down the bad stuff and focus on being good. But here's what actually happens. What you bury doesn't stay buried. It grows stronger in the darkness, influencing your behavior in ways you don't understand. You find yourself overreacting to small things, sabotaging your own success, repeating patterns you swore you'd never repeat. And you can't figure out why, because the real cause is locked in the basement. I knew a man who despised his father's anger, swore he'd never be like that, prided himself on being calm and controlled. But then he had children, and to his horror, he found himself raging at them over tiny things. He'd locked his own anger in the basement, thinking he'd gotten rid of it, but had simply been waiting in the dark, gathering strength until it burst out in exactly the way he feared. This is what the basement of shadows does. Every quality you reject in yourself doesn't disappear. It goes underground and starts running your life from the unconscious. You judge others harshly for traits you secretly fear in yourself. You attract situations that force you to confront what you've been avoiding. You become, quite literally, possessed by the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. But here's the remarkable thing. The shadow basement doesn't just contain what you fear. It also holds tremendous power, creativity, and vitality. That anger you buried might become passionate advocacy once you face it. That sadness might become deep empathy. That shame might become fierce compassion for others who struggle with similar issues. The way out of the basement requires descent. Not avoidance, not denial, but the courage to go down into the darkness with the light and see what's actually there. Not to judge it, not to fight it, but simply to acknowledge it. Yes, this is also part of me. And in that acknowledgement, the shadow loses its power to control you unconsciously. You become whole again, integrated, no longer at war with yourself. So here we are, 7 places that destroy your true self. The hall of mirrors that makes you rigid and afraid. The arena of comparison that makes your achievements meaningless. The theater of masks that erases your authentic face. The room of silence that buries your truth. The storm of noise that drowns your inner voice. The chamber of self-betrayal where you abandon yourself gradually. And the basement of shadows where you hide from your wholeness. But recognizing these places is only the beginning. The question now is, how do you leave? How do you reclaim yourself? The answer is both simple and terrifying. You must become conscious. You must look honestly at where you are. Not where you pretend to be, not where you wish you were, but where you actually spend your psychological time. Which of these places do you inhabit daily? And then you must begin to leave. Not all at once, not dramatically, but deliberately. Start limiting your time in toxic environments. Set boundaries with people who demand your mask. Create space for silence where your inner voice can speak. Make small choices based on your own truth rather than external expectations. Begin the slow work of integrating what you've hidden in the basement. This won't make you popular. People who are comfortable in these places will feel threatened by your departure. They'll call you selfish for setting boundaries, weird for being authentic, antisocial for needing silence, irresponsible for following your truth. Let them. Your freedom is worth their discomfort, and here's what you'll discover on the other side. When you leave these dangerous places, you don't just feel better, you become different. Your relationships deepen because they're based on truth rather than performance. Your work becomes meaningful because it comes from your authentic self. Your mind clears because it's no longer filled with noise and comparison. You feel alive again because you've stopped abandoning yourself. But perhaps most importantly, you give others permission to leave too. When you stop participating in these toxic patterns, you create an opening for others to escape. Your family might begin speaking truth. Your friends might remove their masks. Your workplace might become more human. Not because you preached at them, but simply because you showed them another way is possible. You see, these dangerous places persist because we collectively agree to inhabit them. But when enough individuals choose freedom, the whole system shifts. One person's liberation creates ripples that spread far beyond what you can see. So ask yourself right now, which of these places have you called home? Where are you spending your psychological energy? What would it take to leave? Because here's the beautiful truth. You are not stuck. These places have no walls except the ones you believe in. The hall of mirrors, walk toward a different voice. The arena of comparison, stop keeping score. The theater of masks, take off the costume. The room of silence, speak your truth. The storm of noise, turn it off. The chamber of self-betrayal, choose yourself. The basement of shadows, descend with curiosity instead of fear. Your true self is not destroyed. It's simply been buried under layers of accommodation, performance, and fear. But it's still there, waiting patiently for you to remember who you actually are, beneath all the costumes and compromises. The meaning of your life is not to successfully navigate these dangerous places. The meaning is to recognize them, leave them, and discover what remains when you're no longer defending, performing, or hiding. What remains is you. The real you. The one who was always there, watching, waiting, ready to live again. And when you find that self, you'll wonder how you ever mistook these prisons for homes. You'll see clearly that freedom was always available, always just one honest choice away. The door was never locked. You were simply afraid to open it, but now you know. The 7 dangerous places exist, yes, but so does the way out. And the way out begins with seeing where you are, admitting it honestly, and taking one small step toward truth. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but now. Always now. This is your invitation. Not to perfection, not to some distant achievement, but to the simple act of coming home to yourself, to living from your center instead of from fear, to playing your own music instead of dancing to someone else's tune. The dangerous places will always be there, offering their false comforts and familiar prisons. But you don't have to accept the invitation. You can choose differently. You can walk out of the hall of mirrors and into genuine conversation. You can leave the arena and pursue what actually brings you joy. You can remove the mask and risk being seen. You can break the silence and speak your truth. You can turn off the noise and listen to yourself. You can stop betraying yourself and start honoring your own knowing. You can descend into the basement and integrate your shadows. This is not easy work, but it is the only work that matters. Because what good is a life spent in these places? What's the point of surviving if you've lost yourself in the process? Your true self is calling. Not from some distant future, but from right here, right now, beneath all the layers of protection and performance. It's been waiting for you to remember, waiting for you to come home. The question is, will you answer?